Do you ever not know your own strength? In 1982, a young man named Tony Cavallo was working on his 1964 Chevy Impala. Now, these are back when cars were actual cars, not like the Honda Fit that I have that's made out of like aluminum foil. But this is like an actual like big car. And he was working on his car, and all of a sudden the car, while he was underneath it, the car slipped off of the jack and he was trapped underneath the car. And his mom, a woman in her 50s, saw what happened and she came running out and single-handedly on her own, she lifted the car up off of her son. But he was unconscious underneath the car and she was holding the car and her son was unconscious, so she couldn't get him out. And so a couple of neighbor boys saw what happened and they ran down the street to get help. And this whole time, his mom is just holding this car up, waiting for help to come. And finally, some neighbors came. They're able to pull Tony out from underneath the car and they take him to the hospital, and he was completely fine. There was no brain damage. There was nothing wrong. He was completely normal and completely healthy. You know, that story shows us that sometimes we don't actually know our own strength. You know, nobody looking at this woman in her 50s would think, yeah, sure, she can lift a 1964 Chevy Impala. But in the moment, you know, her adrenaline was rushing and she did it. And, you know, in some ways, I think we can look at ourselves and we can think about situations or about circumstances in our lives, or even the pioneering vision that God has given us, and think, there's no way that that can happen. You know, we can think, I'll never raise the support that I need for that. Or I'll never be able to gather the team that I need for this vision that God has given me. Or I'll never be able to lead a team of people into pioneering something new. Or I've never done anything like this in my life before. How is this even going to work? But what I believe, and what your leaders at Launch and your leaders at RSM believe, and what God knows about you, is this very important principle of pioneering, and it is that you are powerful. You're not powerful because of your intelligence or your good looks or your financial potential or your health or your social giftings. You are powerful because God made you that way. You know, there are some principles that are central to this idea of being powerful, and we can see these principles actually portrayed in one of the very first stories in the Bible, in the story of creation. And one of these principles is that God has given us authority to act and to rule in this life. Let's look at Genesis chapter 1, and in verse 26, God is speaking, and it says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.' So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them and said, 'Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it. And have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth.' And God said, 'Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for you for food.' And it was so. And God saw everything he had made, and behold, it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day." And so in this story of creation, in this story of God creating man, we see a couple of different things. Number one, as humans, we are created for dominion. God gave us dominion over the earth. He gave us dominion over the plants, over the birds, over all the animals. He gave us dominion over this earth, to rule and to reign over this earth. And he gave us as humans a leadership role to play in that. So not only were we also created for dominion, but we were also created in God's own image. We are the only thing of creation that God said that about. He said, "Let us make man in our own image." And there are aspects of God that operate in us, right? We as humans are creative. Even if you're not artsy like myself, you can't really draw very well or paint, you know, we can create things. We can create something out of nothing. We were created for relationship and for love and for faithfulness and to have gifts of the Spirit. And because we were created for dominion and because we were created for his image, that means a couple of things for us. It means that we have authority. We have authority to make decisions. We have the ability to make decisions and to do things the way that feels best to us. You know, God gave authority to Adam in the garden to name the animals. He didn't tell Adam exactly what he wanted each animal to be called. Like, he gave that authority to Adam. He gave that decision-making ability to Adam. And so God has given us authority, but he's also given us responsibility. You know, he gave Adam the responsibility to keep the garden, to till the soil, to help it bear fruit, and to not destroy it. And if God has given you a vision to pioneer something, he's also given you the responsibility to keep and to steward that vision. You know, what all of this means is that God has given us authority as his stewards of creation, and out of that authority, out of us being his image bearers, out of us acting as stewards of creation and stewards of what he has given us, out of that flows power. But it's really important to remember that this power doesn't come from inside of us. It's not something that we muster up in and of ourselves. It comes when we rely on God. In 2 Corinthians chapter 2, Paul is talking about this. He says, "Because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, for this reason, to keep me from exalting myself, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from exalting myself. Concerning this, I implored the Lord 3 times that it might leave me. And he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.' Most gladly, therefore, I would rather boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore, I am content with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, with difficulties, for Christ's sake, for when I am weak, then I am strong." You know, in these verses, we see that Paul boasts about his weaknesses. You know, we don't really know what this thorn in the flesh is. The Bible doesn't really say. But what we do know is that Paul is boasting about his weaknesses. Why? Because when he is weak, the power of Christ may dwell in him. You know, when we are weak, and we're weak a lot, that is when the power of Christ can dwell in us and through us. And as you are pioneering something new for the Lord, there are going to be countless moments when you feel like you're weak, when you feel like you don't have what it takes, when you feel like you don't have the answers, to which the Lord would say, "You are absolutely right. When I am weak, then I am strong. When I am weak, then the power of Christ can dwell through me." And it's in my weaknesses that moves me towards a dependence on God. You know, I know a lot of you know that I spent 10 years on the mission field from when I was sharing in my missions class, but something you might not know about me is I actually hate flying. I am a very nervous flyer. If I could take a train or drive everywhere in the world, I would totally do it. Like, I would take a boat for 3 months to get somewhere rather than fly. I hate flying. I've had a couple of kind of nervous experiences with it, and I've burst into tears on planes before. I've done it all. I've grabbed the arm of a stranger standing next to me, and I've probably flown between 200 and 300 times in my life. So I do it all the time. And it's in those moments, right, where it's like, I feel weak in this. I don't want to do this. I'm scared. I'm nervous, all of these things. Then I find myself relying on God. I find myself letting his power move through me. And I find myself depending on him and needing him in a new way. God is going to meet you in your weaknesses. As you are pioneering, as you are sharing the vision, as you are starting new things, God is going to meet you in your weaknesses, and he's going to meet you in the areas where you need to rely on him and be dependent on him. And these weaknesses don't define you. They don't hold you back. Sometimes it can actually be fuel for where God is wanting to take you. When we rely on God, we are powerful. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is going to go your way. There's whole streams of Christianity that preach that if I love and I trust God, I'll get what I want and everything will go well for me. But, that's not the way the Bible works, and that's not the way God works. But as a pioneer, as someone who God has called to start new things, one of the core beliefs that you need to have is the belief that you are powerful, and there are actually vast areas of your life that you do have power in. So often we can feel like we are victims of circumstance and that things are happening outside of our control. And yes, there are a lot of things in life that happen outside of our control. But the truth of the matter is that we actually do have influence and power over many more areas of life than we actually think. And I don't have time to go into a ton of them, but I just want to list a few. We have power over our thoughts. What do I let my mind focus on? What do I let my thoughts be engaged with? Do I find myself worrying or wrapped up in anxious thoughts? Or do I find myself dwelling on the Lord and dwelling on his truth and dwelling on the person of who he is? We have control and power over our attitudes. When things aren't going well or when we're in stressful situations, like how do I choose to react to that? Am I somebody who just gives myself over to my emotions and over to my feelings? Or am I somebody that can, have control over my feelings or over my emotions? We have control over our spiritual life. How do I pursue God? How do I pursue a relationship with him? How do I cultivate that personal relationship with God? We have control over our health. There are a lot of aspects of health like, cancer and disease and things like that we don't always have control over, right? But there are a lot of things that we do have control over. What do I feed my body? Do I exercise? Do I take care of the temple that God has given me? We actually do have power over our health and over our physical bodies. And, the Lord says that our bodies are a temple to the living God. And so we should take care of this body that he is giving us. In all of these things, you are powerful. You were created in the image of God. You are created as one with authority, and you have a responsibility to steward, to take care of the pioneering vision that he has given you. And the best part about all of it, the best part about everything that I'm saying, is that he has promised that his power would be made perfect in our weakness. And so every step of this pioneering journey, when you're feeling like I feel weak, I feel like I don't have what it takes, God says, I am with you. My power is made perfect in your weakness. And when you rely on me, you are powerful.